Womanjeka, let's transform eco-anxiety to action. Series 3 of the 2Bays podcast is a collaboration between Regeneration Projects, UN Youth Australia and RMIT University. We acknowledge the two Great Bays, Port Phillip and Western Port, which are known to Melbourne's First Peoples as Nerm and Warmarin or Murrumbik. So we show deep respect to First Nations elders across Australia, past and present, who for over 60,000 years have cared for country with rich ecological knowledge. Their leadership reminds us of our own responsibility as a B Corp and actor in the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. Just like Kung Fu Panda movies, there comes a time when the master passes the baton to an apprentice. The same process is happening right now in Australia between baby boomers and Gen X and Gen Y millennials and Gen Z. How's it going? Let's find out. Jess Vize is the State Coordinator for Roots and Shoots Victoria, a leadership program run by the Jane Goodall Institute. She's currently studying a Bachelor of Environmental Science at Deakin University and finds time to be a casual learning facilitator at the Royal Botanical Gardens of Victoria. Emily Alexander is the Education Manager for Culture College, Arnhem Aboriginal Corporation. She has a Bachelor of Outdoor and Environmental Education from Monash University and a Master of Indigenous Education from Macquarie University. In a gum nutshell, intergenerational leadership can be tricky at the best of times. Pioneering elders, mentors are setting an inspiring example for others to follow. So when we proactively embrace Gen Z's ecological superpowers, everyone benefits. Womanjeka, Jess, you've recently returned from the UK, spending some quality time with Jane Goodall. How lucky are you? That must have been amazing. What was the experience like?
Yeah, so it was an amazing experience to really lead Roots and Shoots Australia across in the UK. So it was a week-long experience. So we had coordinators from about 35 countries across the world coming together to one place, at Windsor Castle in the UK. So it was an amazing experience to really share stories and how we can really grow the Jane Goodall Institute in the future, and really learn how we can especially grow the Asia Pacific region as well, and mentor other countries, especially across the Pacific, to really start their own projects and grow the environmental leaders in those countries as well. And it was amazing to hear from Jane's wisdom and Jane's ideas on how she wants her organisation to really grow and flourish in the future.
Yeah, awesome. Wow, we're going to be diving into more of those threads. Can't wait. And some of those Pacific connections are really interesting too. Emily, Womanjeka, Nemarini, how are you? What's it like being back on Boomerang Bunurong country on the Mornington Peninsula after spending so much time up north on Yolngu country and our dear elder Djapirri Mununggirritj?
Hey Matt, Naramanmak, Namarini. Thank you for having me today, and it feels nice to be back on Bunurong country, and being able to weave and reintegrate all the knowledge and wisdom that's so deeply shared and gifted from Yolngu country. I've got back just recently, and just in, I guess, that liminal space of all the knowledge that's shared so deeply from Yolngu and the elders, and what the students are experiencing up there, so deeply connected to country, and then coming back and how does that sit here, and where do I walk now, and how do I weave this into just everyday being, because there is a constant doing down near the city. So how to be here with country is been really taking me by heart at the moment.
You're both in transition at the moment, which is an interesting space, and I think that is I was just seeing Jess kind of nod as you were sharing there, Emily, because I think there's a lot of relatability with where you're at, and how do you bring those back together? How do you integrate those experiences? How do you step forward? And I think that that's just to position that into the broader, conversation of this series. We've really gone on this journey in this series and campaign, transforming youth eco-anxiety to action. And I think for a lot of the listeners, I think for a lot of us that are working on the project, some of the stakeholders that we've started to engage across business, education, government, community, I think everyone's holding that same of like, how do we integrate? How do we move forward? So I think we're all in that kind of state of being. We're going to be talking a lot today around the importance of elders, of mentors, of this intergenerational knowledge exchange, and this empowerment is specifically to be able to support Gen Z in moving forward and navigating the world. And Jess and Emily, you're literally walking in the footsteps of some of the world's foremost, ecological leaders. Jane Goodall from a British background, Djapirri Mununggirritj and other elders from a Yolngu and First Nations background. And you're both, I think, personally, super lucky to have those ladies, those mentors, those role models in your life. And so I feel grateful through those connections to be able to talk and share with you. Emily, if I come to you first, when you see young school students leaving Melbourne, leaving Sydney, heading up to Arnhem Land, spending time on country with Yolngu Elders through Culture College, what do you notice happens? How do you see some of the shifts in the way that they understand themselves, the world, connections to community?
Yeah, I think I've been watching this journey for young people for the last 6 years through Culture College, and it's just it's such a transformation. It's a real rite of passage for these young people. They're coming up out of their busy lives from down south, and they've got a connection and understanding with country, but the deeper layer and sense of belonging of what that feels like, that permission of how to be and to do and to feel in that, it's that gets opened. It's almost like they come up with this tunnel vision of connection with themselves and country and family, and that's just opened. It's kind of that journey from head to heart, and they're just cracked open, and they're sitting with the fire and with people like Djapirri, and when Djapirri speaks, it's the smoke, it comes around and it wraps around the group, and it hits everyone in a different way for what they're ready for at that time. And yeah, these young people are getting all these different seeds of growth for what they're ready for, and that's supporting them to feel connected, not only with First Nations communities, but with country through their own innate being. And I think that's the beauty of Culture College. It's hey, we don't want you to look from the outside. We want you in here. This is the ROM, this is the law, this is Goodall, this is the web of connection, and this is how you fit. So then you can carry and walk with that as a deeper kind of innate sense of belonging. And I think from that is the power these young people are going home with. It's okay, I know how I can fit. I know that colonisation is uncomfortable, but I know I can sit in this. I don't necessarily have to fix it. I need to feel it. And that's what's happening up with country and with Yolngu and First Nations people from around Australia. These young people are feeling the weight of this. They're feeling the power of country and how healing that is. And then they're walking with that home. And how are they going to connect that in their own backyard, with their own family, their own communities? And essentially that connection to country of where they're birthed and born as well. So, yeah, it's incredible and powerful and hard to put words to be honest. But it's an honour to witness and to see these young people, having this seed planted as Marcus Lacey, one of our directors, our Yolngu directors, he says, it's your birthright to know this. It's your birthright. If you're of and born here, then you need to know this knowledge so you know how to walk with it and what to do from here on. So, yeah, it's a real honour.
You said at the beginning there that, you know, there's a rite of passage that happens, and we were listening in one of the recent podcasts, and Georgia, who's part of the RMIT communications team supporting us through this campaign, she was sharing the words of another elder, her nonna, and her nonna was saying something's been lost, and she was articulating around this thing of that connection to the land and that caring for the land and the land cares for you, that reciprocity. She really feels like maybe that rite of passage hasn't happened for a lot of people, and maybe a lot of Australians, and I'm going to put, you know, Australians in senior decision making, you know, positions as well into that category. And so it's really hard if you haven't had that rite of passage to then carry out the work and responsibility. And what I heard in what you were sharing, Emily, was that the transformation, you didn't just say, yeah, these kids come up here and then they're going to have, you know, bright careers in sustainability or in law or in, you know, education or whatever it is. You said, actually, it's what they take back home to their families, to their communities. You know, it's really from the center of their worlds. When you talk about rite of passage, what does that mean? How do you understand that rite of passage that they go through?
I think they're coming up with a perspective of themselves and their friends and their school and what success looks like through the lens of a younger person. And that's being completely shattered up on country with Yolngu. They're out of their environment, their home environment and what they're used to. And they're put into that sort of that liminal space that, you know, when you're in a cocoon and before the butterfly sort of transforms, it's that space of like, oh, how do I be here? And time dissipates. They're on Yolngu time up there. They're flowing with country. They're out of their comfort zone in many ways, and they're hearing a lot of wisdom. But most of all, they're connecting with their spirit. And that can be quite new for a lot of young people. And also that sense of family and that love that is beyond just like your blood or your birth family, to be welcomed like in that way. So it's like, yeah, so much from this head sort of space of how I should be in the world to this heart knowing and trusting of self. And yeah, I think like Djapirri sort of, when she shares about the concept, and this is sort of the metaphor Culture College is founded on, is Jambat Manapan Miri. It's when that salt and fresh water meets in the middle, and it can be turbulent at times. And I guess we can look at that like colonization, but we can also look at it within ourselves. We all have salty and fresh parts of ourselves. And when they come together, they can be turbulent. But how do we sit below that turbulence in the depths and really know who we are and what our truth is and how we want to walk and be in this life? And I think that's what they're going home with. But the power is, it doesn't just finish when they get home, because, you know, their parents might see them as the same person that left a week ago, but they're not. So the parents and the community have to be involved in that reintegration. Rites of passage has always been held by community and elders, and when they get home, yeah, to have that chance to share what they've been through, what they've felt, what they've learned. So not only are they able to share that, their parents are also able to hear it and learn through that as well. So it's a ripple effect. And then hopefully that can continue beyond. So yeah, I think that's sort of in a nutshell how I see it within the way that we're doing it. But I know, yeah, there's many other ways that rites of passage has been happening for thousands and thousands of years, but in a sort of a more modern lens, but held by ancient wisdom and held by elders and held by country, in a new way, I suppose. Yeah.
Sounds like the kind of rite of passage that you wish every Australian had access to in some way, shape, or form. And that grounding. And I'm just thinking about that feeling of being on country, sitting around fire circles with elders, and there's nothing quite like it. If you have had that privilege, it is an incredible thing. So shifting from one culture to another culture, let's head across to Windsor Castle, where you were hanging out and spending some quality time with Jane Goodall, Jess. When we were catching up, before this recording, you did emphasise that aspect of that importance of that quality time, and you'd had crossed paths before, but you hadn't really had that opportunity to drop in. And she's not getting any younger. Many of our elders who hold rich ecological knowledge are in the same boat, and so those opportunities are just even more precious. What was that experience like, and just that sense of like, this is someone that's kind of been paving the way, and here I am getting this opportunity?
Yeah, it was an amazing experience to just spend time with Jane and learn from all of her experience and all of her opportunities she's really had a lot along the way, from when she first went and started her research and went to Tanzania all those years ago in the 1960s, and hearing about all those experiences she had, being able to spend time and really research the chimpanzees and her research and really learn about everything that she's done up until that point was really inspirational. And this is something not quite like just spending time with someone like Jane, because of all the amazing things that she's been able to contribute to the world of science, and also having inspirational female leaders in science that have really paved the way for lots of young women who are coming through as well. So I think that's really important for young people in science and also in STEM, to have people that they can look up to as they go through whatever pathway they choose as well. So I think that's really important too.
Just diving into that importance of young women seeing other women role models, elders, mentors that they can look up to. I suspect Jane probably plays that role for many people. But what was it like for you? Like, is that something that you've found before, or is she really a unique person in your life and who you look up to?
Yeah, she's definitely really unique, because there's not lots of other people that have done, the pathway that she's done. There's lots of other women who have done so many different pathways, but in like wildlife conservation and environmental education, like it's really, a unique person to me as well in the pathway that I've taken, because I've been a part of the Jane Goodall Institute for the past 3 years. So she's really been, a big part, really having role models to look up to in that, and really hearing from her knowledge, her insight, to really gain an understanding of where she's gone, and really having that knowledge and that wisdom. So I reckon lots of people all around the world really look up to that, and look up to all of the amazing things she said at lectures all around the country and all around the world, because she only actually spends about 3 weeks of the entire year actually at her home in the UK. So she spends a lot of time really sharing her message to lots of young people all around the world as well.
Yeah, she's an incredible person. I'm just going to so that our listeners can get a sense of each of your organisations a little bit more. Jess, can you just explain the Roots and Shoots program and what that looks like in Victoria and Australia?
Yeah, of course. So Roots and Shoots is really like a Australia-wide organisation that's really run by youth for the benefit of young people as well. So it's really underpinned by the Jane Goodall Institute of the term APE, so looking after animals, people and environment all at one. So it's really exploring the idea that you can't really look after animals and the environment if you don't really take care of yourself. And it's kind of exploring the idea that all of those concepts are really intertwined together. So it's really, we have volunteer communities all around Australia that really undertake lots of environmental programs. So that could be doing like a tree planting event, or working with lots of other friends groups and volunteer groups to really do like a weed removal event like in Victoria. A big focus for us is we work with the Friends of Mud Island in the middle of our Port Phillip Bay to undertake seabird bird removal for the benefit of seabirds, and we've got other teams around Australia that do the same thing, as well as other national programs. So we've got our youth council, which is we've got a few zoo-based programs that are undertaken called Embrace the Wild that allow young people to really develop those zoo-based skills, and also some leadership programs. So it really allows young people to learn about what steps they can take to really make a positive difference for the environment and for other people as well. So really emphasising Jane's idea that local actions can really have a global impact. So that kind of idea is really emphasised in everything we do as well.
I love that image that you painted of Mud Island and not the sea spurge so much. The fact that you're cleaning up is really great. But being the Two Bays podcast, Nurm, Port Phillip and Warmarin or Murrumbidgee, Western Port are obviously the inspiration for that. So to notice, those grassroots regen work that you're doing, and Mud Island being in the middle of the bay, a little bit further towards the south, not many people know about that. What's it like when you're actually out there on Mud Island?
Yeah, it's amazing. So it's really like a series of islands all throughout, more like the south of the bay. So it's not always accessible with like the increase and decrease of tides. But yeah, it's an amazing experience to go out there and see lots of seabird activity as well, depending on the time of the year, and then undertake really vital work as well, and also allowing all of our volunteers in Melbourne and in Victoria to really undertake the really important work, and also learn from the rangers from Parks Victoria that we've got a really long-standing connection with as well. We've partnered with them for the past few years, since 2019 when she last came to Australia, and really learn from them and learn from their knowledge of conservation and how we can really best protect our seabird life. So it's an amazing experience, and it's really great to continue that long-standing connection with them to look after the seabird habitat in the middle of our bay for a long time to continue. Yeah,
awesome. And a shout out to Parks Vic and to the rangers out there that do a lot of the frontline work in caring for land across Australia, including those Indigenous rangers, which fortunately we're seeing more and more connections to and with, and just the power of that ecological knowledge from the Western and the cultural, Indigenous cultural perspective. It's really something that's super exciting. And also a shout out to our friends at the Thin Green Lime Foundation. We've had a really strong relationship and done some great things with them, but always reminded of the importance of those frontline workers in caring for our planet. Emily, just coming back to you, are you able to just give us a 101 to Culture College, just so that listeners that might not have come across it can understand it, and maybe as part of that, understand how different it is from maybe other, programs and leadership initiatives that are out there across the country?
Yeah, sure. So Culture College, we're an Aboriginal corporation, we're a not-for-profit, and we're also a charity. And we work through education, bringing First Nations and non-Indigenous peoples together to learn and to understand and find balance. And then through that, what do we do? How do we walk with this? We're guided by our Yolngu directors, Djapirri Mununggirritj and Marcus Mungal-Lacey, and newly appointed CEO Stu McMinn, who's a Darug man. And I guess the power of what we do is we're working with schools across Australia, predominantly Naarm and around Gadigal country, to educate, and not to say, hey, come up to Arnhem Land and connect with First Nations culture and law and story. It's like, come up there, but also what is the knowledge and the story and the culture of where you sit, where you grew up, where you live, and connecting with First Nations knowledge holders from those places as well to weave and connect the stories, because First Nations culture is so diverse. There's so many different stories and songlines connecting everyone together. So how do we draw that all together so that education becomes a really solid foundation to walk with, not just sort of like bits and bobs of, you know, I guess what I learnt at school, which was just coming from predominantly a non-Indigenous teacher. So how can you, listen deeply to the knowledge holders and to country as your central teacher?
Country as a teacher, that's something that I've heard my Yolngu mum, my adoptive mum, Djapirri, talk about many, many times. And I think when you take that to heart, it really opens you up to a different way of seeing and being in the world, because you notice, like just this morning, for example, I was out in the cultural space here at RMIT, and there's a seasonal calendar talked about now being in tadpole season, and talking about it made reference to the bullen or the superb lyrebird, and the way that it had finished its displays by this time, and that was linking to mating seasons and so on. But those things, and what I hear in the language patterns of our Yolngu and other First Nations friends, is this triangulation between what's happening on country and how that all relates back to us. And I was hearing it in what you were sharing as well, Jess, and it seems like what I find really exciting is to sense that there is this confluence moment that's happening in Gen Z, where greater Indigenous and Western knowledge is going to come together, and that's going to permeate our society. I'm looking at the date today, and I'm noticing that it's very close to the anniversary of the referendum, and the vote that perhaps for many of us didn't quite go the way that we hoped, and the different reasons for that. But that power of listening to the voice of First Peoples, and especially elders and culture carriers, is just so important, because it has the potential to benefit of us all, to benefit country, to benefit First Peoples, non-First Nations peoples, but also for us to hold together, and maybe a bit of a rite of passage for us all as a community living in Australia now. One of the ways that Regeneration Projects has explored this in our own work is through an initiative called the Business with Nature Fellowship. And there's another voice that I'd like to bring into this conversation. So let me just share a little bit of background. Sophia Bagatsing is a familiar face at Regeneration Projects. She interned with us back in 2022 after she came up to me at the end of an event and said, "Matt, can you mentor me?" Just got bowled over by her passion. She became one of the first graduates of our Business with Nature Fellowship in 2023. And from there, she's been developing her own enterprise, Friends of the Forest. So we caught up with her recently. She was sending some messages from her homelands in the Philippines and connecting there to her own Indigenous roots.
Hi Matt, thank you for inviting me to share a bit about my journey of regeneration through the Business with Nature Fellowship. My name is Sophia Bagatsing. I am a first-generation Australian, fourth-generation agriculturist with roots hailing from the Philippines. Last year, I had the opportunity to be part of the Business with Nature Fellowship, and it was a transformative experience for me. It provided a unique opportunity to connect with other like-minded individuals who were just as passionate about bridging the gap between nature and business. It was a year-long program of mentorship, workshops, exercises, and during that time I was able to develop a deeper understanding of regenerative practices and what that might mean in a business context. Not only was it a fun learning experience, but one of the most significant outcomes of the fellowship was the opportunity to explore how my Indigenous cultural heritage in the Philippines could actually be integrated into the life I was building here in Australia and the passion I had for environmental work. This led me to explore the idea of building the Friends of the Forest project, which aims to restore the world's bioregions through community stewardship and volunteerism. My father's family, hails from the Banawe Rice Terraces, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So in these rice terraces is where you will find the Ifugao people.
What's interesting about Sophia's story is that she's weaving Indigenous and Western knowledges together from her own story.
As I was finishing up my agricultural studies at the University of Melbourne, I started to feel a deep sense of responsibility to contribute to the preservation of the precious cultural and ecological heritage that my ancestors had left for me. Friends of the Forest project is rooted in the belief that we can learn valuable lessons from Indigenous cultures about living in harmony with nature. Having nature at the core of your business is part of what the Business with Nature Fellowship teaches, and it's also the foundation for the 5 capitals that you learn from regeneration projects. The regeneration model that I've followed emphasizes the importance of stewardship over ownership. It recognizes that we are part of a larger interconnected system and that our actions do have a profound impact on the environment. I wanted Friends of the Forest to reflect the principle that we must not only take from the land, but we give back by restoring it, replenishing it, and regenerating it. And like I learned from you, Matt, we try to leave places better than we found it.
Love that, Sophia. What's next?
I'm hoping to come up with a program that combines travel and volunteer work, allowing individuals to make a tangible difference while still experiencing the beauty and diversity of the environment. It's about fostering a sense of connection and understanding with the locals, but also allows us to nurture a deep-seated respect for the natural world. Ultimately, I hope this project inspires and empowers communities to take an active role in regeneration and cultural preservation. But I also hope that participants don't just see themselves as consumers of an experience or a product, but rather the stewards and the champions of building a more sustainable and equitable future. My deepest gratitude to the team at Regeneration Projects for all the guidance, mentorship that's allowed me to flesh out this idea and explore what might be possible if we try to approach problem solving and running our businesses with nature at the core.
Brilliant, Sophia. Thanks so much for taking a moment to share while you're back home in the Philippines. Talk soon. So, Jess, Emily, as part of, the cycle of life, there's always been this passing on of knowledge between generations. But something that feels extra precious and scarce these days is that ecological knowledge that some of our elders and our mentors hold. And whether they come from a British or a European tradition, or whether they come from a Yolngu or a First Nations tradition, they come back and they've got similar roots. There's similar principles there. I'm curious for each of you, when you think about your own self and you've had these opportunities to connect with these elders, and as your own leadership and your own grounding in the world becomes stronger, what do you feel is important for being part of this next, let's call it Gen Z, or let's call it generation restoration if you're connected to some of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, but this let's call it a wave of momentum that is not only transforming eco-anxiety to action, but it's around a cultural and a generational shift to having a deeper care for country and our planet. Emily, I'm going to pass to you because I know that when you listen to stories and knowledge, you don't just listen, you hear that, and there's a responsibility that comes with it. What does that feel like for you, and how do you feel about, in time, carrying that baton forward?
I feel like it's, I think it starts with your own innate connection and remembering, you are country and how you fit into this earth kin and web of life, and to take time to really feel that and connect with that through your everyday being, your sacred ritual that you do when you wake up or through the middle of the day or when you go to bed, that, you know, remembering that you're held by sky country and you're held by the earth and you're held by mother, and then drawing the power from that place as to how we walk, rather than reacting. We're moving more with the flow and the cycles of what's always around us. And yeah, sometimes if can get out of that head and allow ourselves to be a channel for wisdom to flow through us from country and to walk from that power, from that healing, from that reconnection. Yeah, I just feel like that's the medicine. And that's what, you know, Djapirri shows and elders, they show is they don't stand necessarily at the front and tell you this is how we need to fix things and this is what we need to do moving forward. It comes, the leadership comes from the back. It's gentle, it's in flow with what's always around us, and it's powerful. It's not necessarily how you do it, but this is how you be to feel what's next and how you move with that. And yeah, that can be quite a different mindset and way of being to, yeah, I guess the modern day culture that we're all a part of. So it's, yeah, how do we walk with both and how do we feel and connect and then grow through that for future?
I'm really curious as you say that, kind of seeing your body language, which is hard for the listeners, for some of the listeners to be able to tune into. I can see that you're moving, and I'm curious, like, is there a place on Boomerang Bunurong country where you go out for a walk and that it's just a spot that you go and you connect with? What's an example of that ritual or a practice for you where you just put a little bit of time aside and you create the opportunity? And yeah, where are you? What does it feel like? Can you paint that picture for us?
Yeah, I guess for me it's just getting my shoes off and heading down just down the road, actually, just the local beach. And my dog actually as well, he reminds me of presence and joy and play with country all the time. And just sitting or walking, feeling the wind, noticing the direction, noticing what flowers are blooming around me, you know, being inquisitive. I think learning about weaving and, you know, making basketry and things in Arnhem land, I'm always like, ooh, what plant could that, you know, where could I do that already? So I guess, yeah, just drawing on what's here and trying to stay present, because often my brain or, you know, wants to be somewhere else. So even if it's just for 10 minutes, this is what's here now. And remembering to just breathe and be with country. I don't have to walk over it or through it or run or, you know, I can just be with, even if it's just for 5 minutes. I feel like that's sort of the medicine, especially at the moment, reintegrating back to Bunurong country after being up with Yolngu. Yeah.
One of the elders that we're very fortunate to be able to work with locally here in Boomerang Bunurong country is Nawi, Dr. Carolyn Briggs, and Jara Carolina Steele, her daughter, has a beautiful artwork in the middle of Melbourne in one of the laneways, and it shines bright in neon lights, and it says, "You are on country." That expression that you're experiencing, people don't have to, you know, if they're very fortunate to have a beach, absolutely. But I think what you're saying is you can do it anyway. Like, you can be there. You are on country always. Like right now we're on country. But it's just that presence, that state of being. And I think when we're talking about transforming eco-anxiety to action, that's one of the actions that we can do, because we can spend 5 minutes a day, you know, walking or being, and that presence just it reminds us of that interdependence between ourselves, whether it's sitting under the shade of the tree and thinking, well, I'm breathing in cleaner air and you're breathing in my carbon dioxide. That works. That's a partnership. You know, let's do more of that. Jess, I'm curious, coming back to you, when you think about, you know, I remember you talking about Jane being increasingly aware of her own capacity to travel, and that slack that other people have to pick up. What does that feel like for all of your fellow peers? What was the energy like in the room when you're having these conversations? Like, what do you mean, Jane? You're not going to be there. And of course she's going to be there, but she'll need to manage her energy more consciously. So what was that energy like in the room? We've got all these young people from around the world coming together, and all right, guys, we've got to keep walking forward. We've got to carry this baton on.
Yeah, I think it's really, really challenging because you kind of assume that someone like Jane or other First Nations elders, they'll kind of be around forever to really lead the charge and lead the action and really motivate lots of young people to really take action. But I think that's really the power of what she's been able to create, and other leaders and other elders as well. The real power and strength of a community can really allow and drive lots of young people to create action as well. Because I find that when you've got lots of other young, inspirational people driving change themselves, it doesn't have to be a massive change, but just doing an action every day. Like, for example, it doesn't have to be huge, like catching public transport somewhere, or doing like a rubbish cleanup or a tree planting event. It's like, it doesn't have to be a huge action, but when you've got everyone striving towards a same outcome or similar kind of events, it can really allow other people to think that they can strive to create that action as well. Because I find that lots of young people feel like they may need to have all of the answers to solve all of the problems that are in front of them. But it's really important for young people to think about that it really only needs to be a small change that can actually make a difference. And if we all strive to make small changes, it can really, make a really nice ripple effect as well.
Sensational. I think that's a beautiful way of wrapping up. I think what you're sharing in that way, that action, Emily, it can be literally that way that you just be in a space, that grounding. And if you spent time with First Nations elders, or even listening to First Nations elders, if you haven't had an opportunity to do that in person, jump online, and you'll notice in the way that they talk, there's a presence and a grounding that is very, very connected. And Jess, in what you're sharing, these activities, these litter cleanups, these tree plantings, these, different practices, you don't have to, to pick up 3 bits of litter, or if you just walk down the street. I do it every week, one hour, on a Friday. I'll do an hour along the local waterway. It used to be NAM down at Port Phillip Bay there at Mornington, but now it's increasingly along the Maribyrnong, or sometimes along the Birrarung Yarra River as well. But you don't have to be a rocket science to do it. It doesn't take a lot of time, but gee, it makes you feel good. And I think that is what starts to build energy and build momentum. When we think about the generational shift that's happening in Australia, I think that's the momentum that we want to unlock more of. Listening to you has been really interesting, and to be honest, very inspiring and very hopeful, because I think in all honesty, we continue to be in a really tough place in the world in terms of the state of health of our planet. But I think what's happening is this groundswell of momentum, and pioneers like Elder Djapirri Mununggirritj up in Arnhem land, or people like Jane Goodall. There's this work that's been done, and I do have to say that women have been doing a lot of passing on that knowledge, and I see that in mainstream Western society now. I also see young women being key to this regeneration movement. It's very, very clear. But it does bring me hope, and it does bring me more and more aware of, I guess, my personal role as somehow navigating and brokering this intergenerational transition. Regeneration Projects is a platform that is very much involved in these intersectional practices between cultures, between generations. But I think that's where we're at more broadly in Australian society. And I think it's a bit of a wake up perhaps to workplaces, to education institutions, to decision makers, and saying, hey, these young people, these young women, these young men, these young people are coming through, and they've got some really good things going for them. And like what you said, Emily, maybe it's not leading from the front. Maybe it's just stepping and allowing space for them to come through, and then giving the tools, the empowerment and some resources to put those ideas into action, because that's what we think is going to start to shift the dial. Folks, we're going to wrap up there. We are stepping towards the final episode of this 2Bays podcast series, Transforming Youth Eco-Anxiety to Action. Nunggurritj, thank you to Jess and to Emily for joining us. And to find out what happens in the final episode, you'll have to tune in. Cheers, guys. This 2Bays series, Transforming Eco-Anxiety to Action, is part of Regeneration Project's ongoing work in building young Australians' ecological literacy, leadership and entrepreneurship skills. If you're an educator, employer, decision maker or a young person passionate about positive change, go to our new website, 2bays.earth, to discover our new app, educational workshops and capacity building programs. Folks, that's a wrap. Thanks to our series partners, UN Youth Australia and RMIT University, special guests, researching, advocating and innovating solutions, and listeners. Remember, subscribe to 2Bays on your favourite podcast platform and Instagram. My name is Matt, and on behalf of Regeneration Projects, Nunggurritj, thank you for tuning in, and see you on the next episode of the 2Bays podcast.